And welcome back to another episode of TED Talk Stamps with your host, Ted the Talking Stamp Collector. But first, a word from our sponsor, who happens to be me also. If you like this program, I would urge you to hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to be notified of future episodes as they go up, hit the bell icon also. Okay, and now back to our program. Today I want to take an overview of some of the most unusual stamps ever produced. Unusual stamps, gimmicks, novelties, whatever you want to call them. Most collectors either love them or hate them. There's not much in between. The purists, the serious collectors, bemoan these stamps because they see them as money grabs on the part of their postal services. But no one's making you buy these. They're not grabbing them. And with the state of the postal service these days, first-class letter mail is dwindling across the globe, and many postal services are struggling to meet their budgets. They're looking for innovative ways to raise a little more cabbage. And as no one's forcing you to buy these stamps, I don't see it as a grab as such. You could either take them or leave them. I prefer to take them. Now, stamps made of unusual materials are not a new phenomenon. For example, when Latvia first became independent at the end of World War I, their shortage of paper forced them to print their first issue of stamps on the back of old German military maps. And later they printed an issue on the back of unfinished banknotes. Unfortunately, I don't have examples of either of those stamps to show you, but if you Google Latvia postage stamp, map back, or banknote, you can find the examples easy enough online. But moving ahead to where we think of now as unusual materials for stamps, back in 1958, Poland celebrated 400 years of their country's postal service, and they issued a souvenir sheet which was printed on silk. And that's this one right here. Now, whether it's real silk or artificial silk, I haven't been able to get a definitive answer, but I'm going with real silk until told otherwise. In 1964, the African country of Sierra Leone issued the world's first self-adhesive stamp, which was in a free-form die-cut format. And this opened the door to many of the novelty stamps that many see as the plague nowadays. In 1965, Burundi issued this set of embossed foil coin stamps, which was then copied by several other countries such as Sierra Leone, Bhutan, Tonga. Speaking of Bhutan, in 1962, they were emerging from their self-imposed isolation from the rest of the world, and they formed their own postal service. In 1966, trying to raise some cash because they didn't have an economy to speak of, they went to the World Bank for a loan, and understandably enough, they got turned down. This was when they turned to postage stamps as a means of raising capital. And their first issue in that regard was a set of coin stamps just like I showed you for Burundi. It was a man named Bert Todd who came from a uber-rich Pittsburgh steel family who had met the future queen of Bhutan while at Oxford University. He became friends with the royal family and an advisor to them, and when they had gotten turned down by the World Bank for their loan, it was Bert Todd who came up with the idea of producing postage stamps for collectors in order to raise money. And over the next several years, Bhutan produced some innovative stamp designs that have become well known, if not exactly classic. In 1966, they produced a set of lenticular 3D stamps. Now, lenticular technology is when you have a picture that's formed in several layers encased in a plastic, which can either give you a 3D effect or a motion effect. You've probably seen these old flasher buttons where when you tilted it, it switched from one face to another. And a similar thing is on these stamps. Here is a set of lenticular bird stamps that were released in 1969. I'm not sure how well the effect will show on video, but this one has a pretty good visual effect in real life where the picture has depth and each of the birds are at a different distance from the surface. In 1973, continuing with that lenticular 3D theme, Bhutan issued this set of stamps for Apollo 17. Again, the effect is probably more pronounced in real life than it is on this video. Then in 1973, Bhutan issued what is perhaps their most famous issue ever, which is their talking stamp, or their little miniature phonograph records. Now this is an expensive set, too expensive for me anyways, and I only have this single example in my collection. Each of the records has a different subject, where one of them plays the national anthem, there's a couple that play folk songs, and mine has a narrative of the history of Bhutan in English. Another record has the history in Bhutanese. And in fact, this record is narrated by Bert Todd himself. Now, unfortunately, I no longer own a turntable on which I can play this for you. However, as I am a great comic book fan also, I have over the decades developed superior mental skills, and if I concentrate hard enough, I think I can draw the music out of this stamp. If I just concentrate.
The Kingdom of Bhutan, Drugyul, or Land of Dragons, is a landlocked country of 18,000 square miles in the heart of the Himalayas. India is to the south and east, China to the north, and Sikkim to the west. The country rises in steps from the densely wooded foothills to snow-capped giant mountains. The Bhutanese people, numbering approximately 1 million, are a strong and well-built race whose religion is Buddhism. The present monarch, the fourth in the dynasty, His Majesty King Jigme Sungay Wanchuk, succeeded his father to the throne in 1972 at the age of 18. A council of ministers assists the king in ruling the country, and the National Assembly, which is an independent, freely elected body, enacts legislation. Over 1,000 kilometers of roads crisscross the country. There are 100 schools and 60 post offices. Basically, Bhutan is an agricultural land. However, new industries in mining, timber harvesting, and handicraft production have recently been developed. Bhutan's national flag is half red and yellow, triangularly bisected, on which is superimposed the symbolic dragon.
In 2005, the British Commonwealth celebrated the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Trafalgar. Most of the British Commonwealth countries participated in an omnibus issue of stamps commemorating the event, and while each country had its own designs for their stamps, one value in each set was identical. And that was the stamp depicting HMS Victory, Lord Nelson's ship. At the same time, the British government was also refurbishing the HMS Victory, and they took some of the old wood from the ship, ground it up into little tiny pieces, and they incorporated the wood pieces into the stamp itself. Okay, where you see those reflections, that's a little plastic coating where little chips or little bits of the wood from HMS Victory are embedded into the hull, the masts, and the spars. This stamp is from Gibraltar, and I have an example from Bermuda also. Now, even though they had the same design, the British Virgin Islands did not use the embedded wood trick like the others did. This is just a standard printed stamp with no extras. So if you're interested in getting one of these sets that has the wood embedded on the stamp, be sure to check a catalog to make sure that the particular set that you see does have that feature. In 1956, after more than a decade of Soviet oppression, Hungarian citizens revolted and took to the streets. Now, after the war, when Hungary became just a satellite state of the Soviet Union, Hungary got a new flag that incorporated the Russian hammer and sickle in the center of their flag. And the revolutionaries showed their disdain for the government and for the Soviet Union by ripping out the center emblem of the flag, as you can see here in this vintage photograph. Now in 2006, Hungary Post marked the 50th anniversary of this revolution by having a stamp with that same hole ripped out of the flag. Pretty cool, huh? Let's talk about Austria for a while. Austria, I consider to be the latter-day Bhutan, as they've just wholeheartedly jumped into the novelty stamp business. In 2005, they issued this stamp of an Edelweiss, the Alpine flower, and this is an embroidered stamp. You can see it is flexible. It is on cloth. A year earlier, they had issued this souvenir sheet honoring their famous Swarovski crystal. And in each of the stamps on the sheet, there are 6 little bits of Swarovski crystal attached to the face of the stamp. In 2008, Austria hosted the Euro 2008 Soccer Championship, and in honor of that occasion, they issued this soccer ball stamp. And the unusual feature of it is made of the same urethane material as the soccer ball used in the tournament. You can see it's flexible too. In 2015, Austria issued this stamp made of simulated leather of the traditional pair of lederhosen, and it's got 6 crystal studs embedded in it also. The next year they accommodated the ladies by creating this embroidered dirndl stamp. This is the traditional costume of Austria. And then in 2018, to top off the men's costume, they created this embroidered Tyrolean hat. And in 2006, Austria issued this little stamp in a miniature sheet format inside a little folder, and the theme was mail from another world, or mail from a different world, rather. And if you look at the streaking meteor, you'll see little glittering particles, and that is where meteorite dust has been embedded into the stamp. In 2007, Austria marked the 10th anniversary of the game-winning soccer goal by Andy Herzog, which propelled the Austrian team into the World Cup that year. And it is a lenticular motion stamp with 3 different images capturing that goal from 3 different angles. And then finally I have this one from Austria from 2016. It has been printed on glass, and you can see from the side view it is a rather thick piece of glass. In 2010 there was a volcanic eruption in Iceland, and Iceland Post wasted no time in exploiting that event. Only months later, they issued this set of stamps, where if you look again at the glossy sections, that is where volcanic ash from that eruption has been embedded into the face of the stamp. In 2017, many people in the world were treated to one of the most spectacular celestial events, which is a total eclipse of the sun. I didn't get to see it myself, so I have to be content with this stamp that was issued by the U.S. Postal Service. Now, this stamp is printed with thermographic ink, or thermochromic ink, rather, which means that the ink changes color under heat. And I will show you what happens here. As my body heat heats up the stamp, you'll see the moon change to the bright side of the moon. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a comic book fan, and I come now to one of my favorite sets issued by Jersey in honor of their native son, Henry Cavill, who played Superman in the movie from 2013, Man of Steel. There are 6 stamps and 1 souvenir sheet in this set, and each stamp or sheet incorporates a different feature. The 45-cent stamp has a augmented reality feature, which you can put into play if you have the Smartsy app. Unfortunately, the Smartsy app is not available in this country, in America, so I am unable to see what that's all about. The 55-cent stamp is printed in plastic, or printed on plastic, with a transparent background, and this signifies Superman's flying ability. The 60-cent stamp shows the Man of Steel printed on a metallic foil stamp. And like the solar eclipse stamp, this one is printed with thermochromic ink. And as my hand heats up the stamp, you'll see the image of the Earth change from a nighttime to daylight. Now, the 80-cent stamp shows a Man of Steel surrounded by rubble. On the floor is some broken granite. And if you can see again the glossiness, that is where actual granite has been embedded onto the face of the stamp. And now we have the 88-cent value, and it has some glow-in-the-dark ink printed over in the white space on the left of the stamp. And it contains a message from Superdad Jor-El. You will give the people an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time they will join you in the sun. In time you will help them accomplish wonders. Finally, there's the souvenir sheet that rounds out the set, and it incorporates lenticular motion technology. And it depicts the Man of Steel going up, up, and away, as he is wont to do. So that's just a brief look at some of the unusual stamps that are out there. Stick around, and in the slideshow I'll show you a few more. And if you have a favorite unusual stamp of your own that you'd like to share with us, just leave a note in the comments below. Thanks again for joining me here today. And if you like the program, let me remind you once more to hit the subscribe button. And until next time, this is Ted the Talking Stamp Collector, wishing you happy stamping.
la ka be jang da Zumba le se tamu linge sai cha Sho do pe ma da je do yi chu ba pi se so ya la da ka be jang da Zumba le se tamu linge sai cha Kante la ri ya lin da sin chi ni da di se so ya la da ka be jang da Zumba le se tamu linge sai cha Ka so pe ma da je do yi chu ba pi se so ya la da ka be jang da Zumba le se tamu linge sai cha Chang ta de ma yin tu le ki la ki se a Ta chang ta de ma yin tu le ki la ki se a Bu wa ye ki sa ko yu re Bo kwa yu sha ne yin tu ka chu la ki se a Bo kwa yu sha ne yin tu ka chu la ki se a